In 1922, Mrs. Florence Stoker was almost penniless. Of all her husband's novels, only Dracula was still in print, and its sales were far from great. Florence Balcombe was born 64 years earlier in Dublin. She was one of 5 daughters of an English officer who had served in India and the Crimea. The family lived at number 1 Marion Terrace in Clontarf. At age 17, she met Oscar Wilde. Then aged 20, he found her exquisitely pretty. For a while they went together to various functions, but both lacked money and the romance petered out. Later he was to say, "She thinks I never loved her, thinks I forget. My God, how could I?" At the age of 20, Florence married Bram Stoker, then aged 30. Stoker lived at 15 Merino Crescent, also in Clontarf. He was a civil servant and a drama critic. They then moved to London, where he became the personal assistant of Henry Irving, probably the best-known actor of the day. In his spare time, Stoker wrote novels. Vampire novels were pretty popular at this time. He tried his hand at one and, in the course of his research, he read about Prince Vlad Dracula, known as Vlad the Impaler. This particular man had a fondness for wooden stakes. Between 1456 and 1476, he had over 20,000 fellow Romanians impaled on stakes and was basically not a nice person to know. It was written of him, his cruelties were committed on such a massive scale that his evil reputation reached beyond the grave to the firesides, where generations of grandmothers warned little children, "Be good, or Dracula will get you." In 1897, Stoker's Dracula was published. He had high hopes for the novel, and Florence believed it would earn enough money to enable her husband to retire from his post as Irving's assistant. Both were to be disappointed. Year after year, the novel kept selling, but not in great numbers. Irving died suddenly, and now Stoker had to take on minor jobs. He then suffered a stroke and died with little money to his name. So badly off was Florence that she was forced to sell his working notes for Dracula. The sale earned her £3. In 1922, she learned that a film version of the book had been made in Germany under the name Nosferatu, a symphony of horror. Furious at the fact that her permission had not been sought, she set out to find and destroy every print of the film. Luckily for us, she did not unearth all the prints. A few survived, and these showed that Nosferatu was a fantastic film, possibly the best Dracula film ever made. It showed that a Dracula film could be both artistic and entertaining. Shortly afterwards, Hamilton Dean, a British actor, put Dracula on the stage, with Florence's permission. He took the play on tour in Britain, and it was hugely popular. When it finally appeared in London, the theatre critics savaged it, but still the crowds came. The London Evening News wrote, "While glittering productions costing thousands of pounds have wilted and died after a week in the West End, Dracula has gone on drinking blood nightly." The play was brought to America. There the part of Dracula was played by Bela Lugosi, a Hungarian who barely spoke a word of English. The fact that he spoke in a strange accent added to the attraction, and he also presented a different image. One newspaper described the new Dracula as sexy, continental, with slicked back, patent leather hair, and a weird green cast to his makeup, a Latin lover from beyond the grave. Audiences, especially females, relished, even wallow in the romantic paradoxes. When Dracula was filmed by Hollywood in 1931, Lugosi played the title role. Audiences were stunned at the start of the movie when Dracula rose from his coffin to join his bloodthirsty concubines. Lugosi's performance was outstanding, and none of his fellow members of the cast knew whether he was acting or being himself. One actor vividly remembered Lugosi between scenes, standing in front of a full-length mirror and intoning, "I am Dracula." The film earned a lot of money for Universal Studios, but it brought bad luck for many people. Helen Chandler, the leading lady, became addicted to drink and sleeping pills. She was committed to a lunatic asylum and one night was badly burned after drinking and smoking in bed. Horace Liverite, who sold the film rights to Hollywood, died drunk, broke and alone in 1933. Carl Laemmle Jr., the producer, failed in his further film career and contracted multiple sclerosis. Until 1944, Dwight Frye, who played the role of Dracula's slave, got no good parts in other films. In that year, just after he had been awarded a juicy role in the movie Wilson, he had a heart attack and died. But I suppose the saddest story of all concerned Lugosi himself. He was soon replaced by Boris Karloff as Hollywood's most famous horror star, and he never again repeated the spectacular 1931 success. His career went downhill, and he was given lesser movie roles. In 1956, like Stoker, he died almost penniless. During his last months, he was addicted to drugs. In accordance with his wishes, he was buried in full Dracula costume, complete with cape and sinister makeup. Florence Stoker escaped the bad luck that others suffered. For the first time in her life, she lived in comfort, her financial situation being reasonably improved by the royalties from stage and screen. On her death in 1937, she left an estate valued at nearly £7,000. Join me for more curious tales and tours.